All right, all right. Good morning. Welcome into the Friday edition of the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It's 8:06 a.m. It is January 17th, and this is the final day. It took one more day to get us here, Eric. We are just one more day away from the Detroit Lions. Well, it'll be, our fourth playoff game in 2 seasons. On our way to the 6th playoff game, because that's where we're going to end up, is in the Super Bowl, right? So I'm excited about it. We got a lot to talk about today, and a few things to get to that didn't get to throughout the week. Brian Branch was on NFL Insiders yesterday, and he talked about rat poison and a few other things that just kind of shook me for a minute there. I'm like, what is he talking about? But it was kind of funny. And he also said that Dan Campbell is even more hyped than he's ever been before, and I didn't even know that there was another level to Dan Campbell. I don't even know how that's possible. So we're going to play that audio for you guys today, bring in Brian Branch and listen to what he spoke to and how important this season is and where this journey is going. But before we get to all that, how you doing this morning?
Fantastic, man. Last night was my last sleep in Brimley, so I'll be sleeping in Detroit this evening, leaving right as soon as we're done. Heading on down to Detroit for the game. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm excited to go. I wish I would have went down tonight. I really wish I would have, but it just doesn't work. It's not going to work out for me to leave today. Either way, though, be a full day tomorrow. Starting off at Moot's Pizzeria. So if you guys haven't seen it, they're doing some pretty cool stuff with their menu. You guys got to get in there and grab a sliced pizza or pie, whole pie, and check them out. But there's also another business highlight that we're going to highlight today, actually 2. And let's just start with that. So let's go right here. I'm sorry. Let me make sure I even have it open. Let's highlight this one, which is actually the Detroit Lions. So why is this not pulling up for me? 1 second. I don't know why it's not pulling up. Let me try again. Yep, definitely not pulling up. That's my notes.
That looks like my screen.
Unbelievable. 2 days in a row here. I'm having issues with this. I don't know why. It just won't pull the window capture in. Oh, here we go. Now it's wanting to do it. Okay, let's try again. All right, sorry about the delay, everybody. All right, so as this article says, all of the Metro Detroit bakeries, restaurants are all aboard this hype train for the Detroit Lions game this weekend. It's a Honolulu Blue themed treats and menus planned, and I think that this is just absolutely fun, right? So you've got all of these different bakeries that are jumping in on this. But then I saw this picture. Ooh, those cannolis look great. Then I saw this picture of this guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, getting in on the action. So what the action is inside Ford Field, they're going to up what they're putting out this weekend for food. And so this is going to be like the burger highlight of the day, if you will. And here it is. So it's what do they call it? They called it the Jahmyr Gibbs approved All Roads Burger, which is a juicy double smash burger that takes a bite out of the NFC North with something from each of Detroit's division rivals. And I thought this was just great. So it's topped with Wisconsin cheddar. So there's your Green Bay edition, right? Pickles, tomatoes, yellow mustard, and celery salt. So there's your throw at Chicago, right? And the Chicago dog with the celery salt. And then purple soda slaw. So this burger is going to be available at the Lions Loyal member marketplaces in sections 100 and 120, as well as the tailgate grills in sections 119, 135, 219, and 235. So I know that I'm already going to get my slice of pizza at Moot's, and I'm probably going to be full just from that. But I got to try this burger. Have to try this burger. I want to take a bite out of each of the NFC North rivals. So that'll be kind of fun. It looks good.
The only thing I don't like about some of the food at the stadiums is that when you want something, and let's say you don't like pickles like me, and you don't want that burger with pickles, you can't get it without pickles, or you can't get it without mustard, or you can't get it. They are already all prepackaged, pre-made, ready to go. That's the only thing I don't like about those.
I guess I've never asked to have anything taken off. I'm surprised that they wouldn't. I mean, you would think that if you had an allergy, they would take it off for you. I would think that they would have to, and they would still warn you and say, hey, this food is made with other foods that could potentially contaminate. But it's interesting. I never knew that.
I'm a picky eater, so it gets me sometimes.
Yeah, you said you don't like pickles?
Oh,
how can you not like pickles?
No, there's half the stuff, all the stuff they put from the other cities I wouldn't eat except for the cheese.
Yeah, so I mean, the bright, crisp crunch of a pickle on a burger, there's nothing better than that, man. I could deal without the mustard, but I don't know if you can not have mustard on a burger. But anyway, I'm gonna check out this Jahmyr Gibbs All Roads burger as soon as I get into this stadium tomorrow. I'm gonna have my bite out of the Packers Wisconsin cheese. We got another highlight we'll do in a little bit here. Local highlight to Brimley that Eric wants to bring to the table this morning. So right away, what do we want to get into? Do we want to get into Brian Branch right away, or should we talk a little bit about the injury report? So last night, I did a old school off the cuff version, talked about the injury report, got everything handled. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in this morning that weren't in last night, and maybe we should do that real quick.
Yeah, let's do injuries first.
Okay. So yesterday we had some bad news. We had some good news, but we also had some bad news. Now, Terrion Arnold was trending. I didn't have any concern that he wasn't going to play. But the two players that we were most concerned about were Kevin Zeitler and Pat O'Connor. And Pat O'Connor's really been playing at another level, a backup guy that made his way onto this team and stuck. And when his number was called, he was playing phenomenal, like doing a great job just about anywhere he was asked to be. And he's out. So he's out with a calf injury. And it's just one of those weeks, right, where you're walking into a game and you know that you're going to be down a guy or two. Who's going to step up now? Who's going to replace the work that he was doing on special teams? We'll see who that's going to be. And then Kevin Zeitler. So this is a big one. Yes and no. I mean, it's huge because he's been one of the best right guards in the game this season. But he's still dealing with his hamstring injury, and he was unable to practice with the team this week. So he's held out of the game. Obviously, the Lions want to make sure that he's entirely healthy for the next game. And I know I'm not trying to look ahead, but if there was a game that maybe they felt more confident about where they could hold somebody out, and I don't know if Kevin is in that bad a shape where he just can't play at all, period. It doesn't make sense to put somebody injured on an offensive line, and take that risk that something happens to Jared Goff, or something happens to Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. So it makes sense. But Mahogany is going to be in his place. Now, whether Mahogany is playing on the right or the left side, I don't know right now. Probably won't know until tomorrow. So Mahogany's been playing great. He's really stepped up as a rookie. Guys battled back from mono this season. And as soon as he got installed into this offensive line about 7 weeks ago, he's played at a pretty high level. So those are the two biggest issues going into this game. Everyone else is fairly healthy. Ennis Rakestraw still dealing with a hamstring and an illness. He did return to practice. His injury clock is it's on day. So he's got 12 days, I think, now left on the injury clock for him to come back to the team. So even though that this illness has kept him out of practice, he was listed as questionable for this weekend's game. And then no injury designations for Terrion Arnold, Taylor Decker, which was personal. We knew that. And David Montgomery. Any thoughts on the injury report?
Yeah, so I get two messages all the time throughout the week this week, and it's asking about one player in specific, and that is Aiden Hutchinson. And just to let everyone know, Aiden Hutchinson will not and cannot be back this week. I doubt he will be back next week. The earliest possible even hint of a chance of him coming back would be the Super Bowl, and still that I don't even see. Maybe it's possible he gets back, practices enough that he can make an appearance and get one play in the Super Bowl, but I just don't see him coming back doing anything meaningful for us this season. And then the other question that I've gotten about 300 times this week is, what color jersey are we wearing? This week and next week, I can guarantee you we're wearing the blueberries. We're wearing blue jerseys the next 2 weeks.
So the issue on Aiden, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Like, I really don't. It's dead to me because it's not happening. I don't know why people keep asking about Aiden. I mean, did Dan Campbell not just make it clear enough? Like, I don't want to give this false sense of everything's going to be okay. You know, it's just going to all magically come together for the defensive line. You know, Dan also made it very clear that the most important thing is practice. He hasn't practiced since week 6. He has had, what I consider, he's got a soft body. He hasn't taken any hits. He hasn't tackled anybody. He hasn't put his body under any pressure outside of rehab. I mean, the Super Bowl is what, February 9th? I think that's the date, February 9th. Am I mistaken there?
Yeah, you're right.
I think it's February 9th.
Yep.
So
Sunday, February 9th.
We're 3 weeks away from the Super Bowl. It's highly, highly, highly doubtful, unless he's back in practice next week, that he would even be anywhere close to being ready to take some snaps. But I've always wished him the best. I would love, to have this happy ending and things work out. It's just, I mean, it's like 99-1 that there's even an opportunity here that he gets on the field. And then, so to back up the other thing you said about getting a snap in the Super Bowl, if the Lions make it or when the Lions make it, you're not going to kill a roster spot for a guy to play one snap. Unless you're playing the entire game or more than 50% of the snaps, you will not be on the roster in the Super Bowl. Guaranteed. You're not going to lose a roster spot. There's only 46 guys that are able to suit up, You suffer 3-4 injuries in the Super Bowl, then what? You gave up a roster spot to somebody that's going to get in for one, glamour play. I don't think so. I think that the Detroit Lions understand what's at stake here. Yeah. Washington side of the football ruled out Jordan Maggie, linebacker, questionable. Tight end Colson Yankiff and linebacker Mikael Walker with an illness that just creeped up on Thursday. Not listed with an injury designation, so Washington got healthy in a hurry. So Jamison Crowder, Zach Ertz, Ben Sano, John Bates, Brandon Coleman, Cleveland Farrell, Deron Payne, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Dominique Hampton, Marshawn Lattimore, and Zane Gonzalez, all in the game. Out of all those names, Zach Ertz is obviously big. Starter, Deron Payne, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Marshawn Lattimore, Zane Gonzalez, kicker. All big pieces to the Washington Commanders football team. So that's your injury report headed into Friday night. I don't know if they're going to have another updated report because yesterday is kind of like our Friday. I'm not sure that we're going to have another injury report coming out today, maybe, but we'll see around 4:00 if we get something. Where'd my chat go? Disappeared. Must have buried it.
Motown Mitch. Hutch will be back for the Super Bowl. Even if it's for one play, he will be back. Still willing to bet anyone on it. You might lose.
All right, Motown, here we go. Here's the bet. Motown, $100 to any charity that you wish, or you put $100 in my foundation when either we don't make it to the Super Bowl and Hutch can't play in the Super Bowl, or we go to the Super Bowl and Hutch is not there in for any place, period. That's the bet. Take it or leave it. It's either we don't make it to the Super Bowl, so he can't suit up, or we are at the Super Bowl and he doesn't play. That's the bet. Take it or leave it. If you want it, put it in the chat.
There you go.
So next up, it's like I'm beating the drum, man. I'm beating the drum here, kicking a dead horse. And it's it's nothing against Aiden. It's just, come on, guys, let's be realistic.
Yeah, but that's like Peter Van Laarhoven. Aiden will be in street clothes for the Super Bowl. Some people are more. Hey, dude, listen. I am sunshine and rainbows when it comes to the Detroit Lions. I always believe there's a chance. I always think that this player's coming back, or we're going to win this game or that game. I'm a realist on this one. I just don't see how Aiden's going to make it back.
Trust me, I would love to have Aiden back. We could have used him all season. Yeah. But this is a nasty injury. I think the most important thing for him is just to get ready for next season so we can run it back. Him and Zadarius Smith, I mean, we don't really need anything more than that. With the way that Josh Pascal's been playing and Levi, I mean, all these guys are going to be coming back more than likely. And I can't wait to see what happens next season. You know, this defensive line has been crazy good this year. There's going to be a lot of changes this offseason when we lose both coordinators, or at least potentially to lose both coordinators. Now that there's been some more names thrown in the hat, I don't know. I'm starting to have this feeling, Eric.
Yeah,
I'm starting because look, I think that Ben's definitely gone to the Raiders.
Yeah,
and I would love to say that Aaron's a perfect fit for the Jets or the Saints, and I've kind of sided with the Saints. But now Mike McCarthy is being floated around. Okay, maybe he goes to the Bears.
Yep.
But there are still so many names out there. What about Cliff Kingsbury, who we're going up against this weekend?
Oh yeah,
You know?
And Cliff actually put off doing any interviews whatsoever until they are completely eliminated from the playoffs. He said yesterday he will not do any head coaching, and he was a head coach before. You know, Cliff Kingsbury, he was the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, and just couldn't get it done there. You know, he was always an offensive genius and could get stuff done. So we'll see what he does.
Well, so that was one of my topics today is. And by the way, tonight I should have a Commanders content creator, a big one, coming in tonight who's been running his mouth all week. And it'll be interesting to see what we talk about tonight. But my question is again, is one of my topics. We'll just talk about it now. So Cliff Kingsbury couldn't get it done with Kyler Murray.
Yep.
I couldn't get it done in Arizona. What has been the difference for him in Washington? Is it truly Jaden Daniels? Is it Dan Quinn? Is it him not being the head coach? I mean, yeah, like you said, he's always been an offensive-minded, you know, kind of a genius guru. I mean, between him and Ben Johnson and others, I mean, they're the cream of the crop when it comes to offensive minds in the NFL. So, you know, Sarkisian and others, right? So I think that it's interesting that when a coach gets fired or whatever, right, and they become an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator again, it seems like the true, I don't know, the true, how do I put this? Who they really were kind of shows up. And who he really was an offensive coordinator. He was never a good head coach. And sometimes it just works that way. Like Robert Saleh, yeah, he wasn't a great head coach. Could not get the respect of the Jets. At least maybe Aaron Rodgers ruined that for him. But now him coming back as a defensive coordinator, more than likely, you'll probably see another dominant defense in the NFL in short order. So I just think it's kind of weird how these coaches move around, and their true identity is where I was going with that. Will come out at some point.
Yeah. Well, that's like somebody Chuck Lund just put in the chat. Jim Schwartz. Perfect example.
Perfect example. Yep, you know, exactly.
He was in over his head. It was just too much at the time. Now, do I think Jim Schwartz should get another shot? Heck yeah, he should. Why his name isn't floated around now, I don't know. But this whole coaching carousel is kind of weird. You know, people are talking about Robert Saleh. He's getting interviews at all these jobs as well. Mm-hmm. So he may end up going to Jacksonville. He may end up going to the Jets, or not the Jets, but he might, you know, go to Chicago or somewhere else. You never know. Or he might go back to the 49ers and be their defensive coordinator again. You just don't know.
So Bucky, we knew that about Williams, right? I don't see Kingsbury going to the Bears. Especially if you're talking about next season, 2025, he's not even interviewing, right? So I don't know if he's not interviewing yet. I don't think that he's going to go to the Bears. I'd be surprised, but that is a good fit. I mean, offensive mind, right? Former, you know, Caleb Williams whisperer, if you will. It is something to think about. Could he go to the Bears? Maybe, I guess. I don't know, but I don't think so. I really don't.
Yeah, apparently the Bears have interviewed 25 people already for their head coaching job.
Yeah, it sucks. It really does.
So are they being very thorough, or are they just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks?
You know, that's kind of what I said the other day, that it just feels like you're bringing in all these people, but why? I mean, you've got such a wide net casted. How are you going to keep, all of these different head coaches in line to, I guess what you're really looking for? I wouldn't interview 25 guys. I would have such a short list, especially in the NFL. I would have such a short list of who I knew fit the city first. And again, we talk trash about the Bears all the time.
Yeah.
But again, does this speak to the ownership and Ryan Poles and their disastrous mentality of not knowing how to put a football team together? Because how many coaches did the Lions interview before Dan Campbell? 5, maybe?
Yeah, I'm 4 or 5, yeah.
Something, right? You have a very short list of who fits you first. And then you probably move on from there to whittle it down to what's best for your organization. Are you going offense? Are you going defense? Who sold you the best? Who had the best plan? It would have to be a top 5 list for me. 25 just seems like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I got to interview all these people to kind of figure out what I'm doing. That alerts should be going off. Alarms should be ringing.
Yeah. Do you remember when Dan Campbell was hired? Robert Saleh was the other front runner with Dan Campbell, as far as the media was concerned, that those two were the top 2 picks for Detroit, and Sheila and the crew settled on Dan Campbell. Could you imagine, had we picked Robert Saleh, how different this team would be right now?
Yeah, I don't think that we would be anywhere close to where we are today. Ornery U of M Dad says ads suck. He says you guys need to smash that like button, get us above 75, and we'll get these ads off. We are almost there. It takes you 2 seconds. Pop out of the chat real quick. Go smash the like button. While you're there, hit subscribe. Toggle on those notifications, because when we hit another 8,500 subscribers, which will probably happen by Monday or tonight, who knows? We're going to give away another mini helmet. So another signed mini helmet by Panay Sewell or Chris Spielman. Next up here, let's talk about. There's a couple of things in the chat real quick. Let me address it.
Sure.
Where did it go? Bucky thinks that Sam Darnold's going to Tennessee. I never even gave that a thought. That's actually a good choice.
Yep.
There was one other thing in there. All right, I'll come back. Derek was asking what time. Derek Lewis was asking what time tonight. So not sure. Waiting on confirmation because we both have things going on at 5 p.m. So it's kind of after we finish that. So it'll be later on in the evening. I'm hoping to get on, by 7 o'clock. I don't like to interrupt the 8 p.m. crew that goes on. Always try to give everybody a little bit of respect, right? Keep those airwaves open so they can have as many people, we can all share in the wealth of YouTube here. So probably around 7 is my guess. That's my guess. And I've also got to get through tape review pretty quickly. Which
we got 75 likes.
At least an hour into tape review tonight. We got 75. Let's get it off.
Yeah.
And then next up, I want to talk about Skipper for just a moment. Dan Skipper. Let's talk about Dan, and then I want to get into Brian Branch. So Dan Skipper.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, when I show you this picture here.
Is this what I sent you the other day?
I don't know. I just seen this morning. I don't know what you sent me.
Okay. All right. With him doing
some interview?
Shrine Bowl. No, what I sent you, what you did at the Shrine Bowl.
Oh, no. This is different.
Oh, this is different? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can mention that then.
Yeah, I forgot about it. Go ahead and talk about it while I get this loaded up.
Yeah. So at the Shrine Bowl, when Dan Skipper was a senior in college, he played in the Shrine Bowl, and they did something unique with him at one of the practices of the Shrine Bowl. They had the 6'10", 350-pound lineman returning punts. And the video came out this week. Well, it's been out for a long time, but somebody found it again and posted it on the internet of Dan Skipper shagging punts and returning punts. Could you imagine Dave Phipp bringing Skip back to return a punt this year? That'd be hilarious.
I mean, I guess I'll never consider something.
They'd have to do a hook and ladder or something.
Yeah, I would never not consider a play for FIP or anybody else being not available, because the Lions just have a way of putting these guys into the game somehow. I mean, we seen it, right? Against the 49ers, we tried to score everybody from the offensive line. I think it was the 49ers game.
It was the Dallas game.
It was at the Dallas game. But I mean, just there's like 4 or 5 games in a row. It's like each week we're getting a new offensive lineman into the game. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Lions are in any sort of trouble on Saturday, which I'm not expecting, that we don't see Penei Sewell back into this game plan somehow. Definitely around the end zone. And it would probably be with Skip reporting. So let's take a look at Skip. This picture in this article. Okay, so Skip, it says right here, how Dan Skipper reported eligible and became a beloved Lion. And we all know that ever since this went down, I mean, it's just been one of the loudest cheers when the Jumbo 13 comes into play. And it's been one of the loudest cheers in the stadium when Skip reports eligible. But I want to focus on this picture. So what I get from this picture, number one, he definitely should have an acting career after football. He's got the face. He's got that. He has this like Irish mob, look to him. He's 6'7", I think, or 6'8", whatever he is. Just a big, he could be like the enforcer of an Irish mob, crew. I don't know if he's Irish, but he just kind of has that look to him. You know what I mean? And he's dressed in this all grit tracksuit, which then, fits right in with the theme of being an Irish mobster. Now, we're not calling him an Irish mobster. It's just if he were to have an acting career, I think that's the role that he would fit well in, I guess is where I'm going. But anyway, so this article, I'll read it to you here. Let me close this up. I'll read parts of it. So after 3 plays spent standing on the sideline to start the Lions' first drive, Dan Skipper's number is called. He runs onto the field with one white-gloved hand raised, and it's calm. Quote, "It's calm until it's not," is what is what Skipper said of his job as the Lions' 6th offensive lineman. In his other quote, "It's just the burst. You have to stay locked in. You can't have the mental lull." Now, the first thing he must do during his burst and within the 40-second play clock is find the white hat, talking about the referee. And or anybody that he can go up to and show them that, I'm coming in as eligible. I'm reporting. I just found it really, really fun to kind of go through some of these things that they were talking about. But this time, when he wanted to come in and check in as eligible, they say Skipper spots referee Brad Rogers pretty easily. He's got great operational presence. And Skipper says, because not all referees are equal, he chatted up an official on Rogers' crew during pregame warmups to make sure that they knew to expect him that night to report, which obviously the Lions have learned a valuable lesson through all of this, right? What happened in Dallas last year, which we all, I think, agree was a sham. Anyway, he started shouting and using his first name, which is the quickest way to get a referee's attention. He's like, Brad, and he's shouting, and he moves in. He's like, I'm reporting. So it was just kind of funny reading through some of this stuff that, the way Skipper enters the game and what happens with the crowd each and every time, we just go nuts. So I think it's fun what he's been able to do. And now he's being highlighted by ESPN. So go read the article for yourself. It's a good article.
I really endeared myself to Dan Skipper when we were on Hard Knocks. That guy has been cut from this team so many times.
Oh, my swoosh is coming off.
And then he finds a way to get back on this team every single year. And I think, is this year or last year the first time that he's actually made the team coming out of training camp and not had to been cut?
That was this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was this year. It was his first time actually making the roster. All right, so let's bring in Brian Branch here. So Brian Branch was on NFL Live and had a conversation with the insiders. Now, there's a couple of things that he talks about in this interview about Dan Campbell having more energy now than he has at all before. He's talking about rat poison, and I thought that was such a good term, rat poison. I'm definitely going to be using it here soon because it's great. Let's just listen to it. This is about a 5-minute clip. I really can't stop it and start it, so we're just going to get through it, and then we'll talk about it at the end.
The Lions are back from the bye. And look who's back here on the Insiders. Brian Branch, one of the stars of that Detroit defense with me, Tom Pelissero, and Judy Batista. Brian, you had at least a little bit of time there to kind of step back, get the body right, get the brain right. How's the vibes around that place going into divisional playoff week?
Shoot, the vibes are immaculate. I feel like everybody's on the same page here, and we hungry more than ever. We didn't been in this moment before, and this time we're trying to finish it.
You all have been Super Bowl favorites, considered leading Super Bowl contenders really all season. I wonder, on the outside, you think, boy, that's an awful lot of pressure that the Lions are under. But how are you guys handling the level of expectations and the level of excitement that must be building in Detroit right now?
We know it's all rat poison. We don't really pay attention to the outside noise. We know what we're capable of doing, and we just want to prove it to ourselves that who we are, that's who we are. And I feel like we don't pay attention to the outside noise at all.
Brian, there were a bunch of games last weekend. Obviously, there was one road team that got a win. That was the one that's coming into Detroit this week, the Commanders. They've got Jaden Daniels. They got a lot of that kind of, hey, we didn't expect to be here, so we're just playing with house money types of vibes around them. When you watch them on tape, how do you stop Jaden? How do you stop that Commanders offense?
You got to shrink the pocket. Jaden Daniels, I played him in college. He's a exceptional quarterback. He kind of reminds me of Lamar, just how he moves and stuff. But that's to me, that's really the game plan, is just shrinking the pocket on him and make him make those throws.
All right, obviously, we know about all of the injuries that the Lions have had, so many of them on the defense. I think it really took people by surprise how you were able to bottle up the Vikings, considering how much mixing and matching has been going on the defense. Where do you think the defense is right now? Not so much in terms of health, but in terms of your confidence level.
I feel like our confidence level is at an all-time high right now. We played a very great offense 2 weeks ago. They had very good receivers. I feel like, us DBs, our secondary, we feel we go into this game with, extreme confidence. And I feel like that's what we need going into the playoffs. And I feel like that's going to be on our side. That's going to help us out moving on.
Speaking of injuries, your running back, David Montgomery, suffered an injury several weeks ago that by all accounts was supposed to be season-ending. He tears his MCL. Doctors are telling him, you got to get surgery, you're done. Finds enough doctors that also go, you know what, you might be able to rehab and get back. How in the world, you know him well, how in the world is that guy playing this week? And how does he look out there in practice?
That's a dog right there. The fact that he came back, I feel like a lot of people will, kind of hold off, but he got grit, and that's what we're all about. And shoot, he looks amazing. He looks like how Demo looked in the beginning of the season. So there's no step off. Shoot, that's a dog right there.
Take us behind the curtain a little bit. What has Dan Campbell been like this week around you guys? What's been his message? What's been his attitude?
His attitude is a little same, but more pumped up. He just feels like, everybody needs to do their job. That's been the message all week, is everybody do the job. We got a whole bunch of playmakers on this team, that when, opportunity presents itself, you got to make the plays, and, you got to do our job, to be honest.
Hang on, Brian. You're saying there's a more pumped up version of Dan Campbell. What in the world can that possibly consist of?
Just him at practice. He be involved in practice, but like overly involved. Just trying to hype everybody up. Pre-practice wise, shaking everybody, joking with everybody. That's what it looked like.
All right, Brian, best of luck, man. I know that joint's gonna be.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Judy, please.
I was just going to ask you about Aaron Glenn. Make the pitch for Aaron Glenn to be a head coach somewhere next year.
I don't want to see him gone, but he's one hell of a. I don't think like there's no me coming into the league. I was lucky enough to have a coach like that. He didn't play in the league before, so he already knows like his football IQ is through the roof, and I feel like he's not just a defensive mindset coach. He's an overall coach and a leader, and that's as a head coach, that's what you want. It's not just a coach but a leader, and he's one of that. So.
Saturday night, going to be a ton of fun. Commanders and Lions. And might I just make one quick suggestion to you, Brian? This might be a game where you put the mouth guard in. Just saying, if there were ever a time where maybe you might need it, this could be the week, man. Thanks a lot for being here, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
All right, so there's Brian Branch on NFL Insiders. Tom Pelissero. I forget his partner's name there. I forget her name. But anyway, I thought it was a good interview. Brian obviously highlighted a few things here, had a little bit of fun. So I'll start we'll work backwards, I guess, on this one, Eric. The mouth guard, the whole mouth guard thing with Brian. How he sticks the green mouth guard in the top of the helmet, which when I first noticed that he had something green sticking out of his helmet, I had no idea what it was in the very beginning of him joining the team. And you couldn't really tell what it was, like when you're in training camp or you're watching the games from the stadium, you really couldn't tell. But it was later that I found out it was a mouth guard. It's something he's always done. I mean, I think since high school he's always done it, or at least since college. My question for Brian would be, why don't you have a mouth guard in? Like, I would never not play without a mouth guard. And a lot of these guys have the real thin, like a quarterback mouth guard so they can talk, but it still protects. It's like a shock doctor, but not really a shock doctor. It's a really expensive dental piece that they put in. So I don't even know if he plays with one of those. I have no idea.
Yeah, he very well could. And they look like an Invisalign,
Yeah.
You can't even tell they have them in. And that's what I'm guessing, like him and JMO and all these guys that let their mouthpiece just flop the whole time they're playing. Because if you notice, JMO's is just hanging off of his face mask the whole game.
Yeah, that would bother the hell out of me. Like, I don't know if it's...
Yeah.
It just would. It would really bother me with something flying around in my face like that. I would just take it off. But they have to, under NFL rules, have a mouth guard attached somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
wouldn't that, you're running that fast down the field, something going like this in your face the whole time? I couldn't do it. No way.
Exactly. I think it would just make more sense to just get the better mouth guard. Like, you make tons of money, get it,
Yeah. And me personally, when I played football, I felt more indestructible when I had my mouthpiece in, when I had my helmet on, when I had my shoulder pads on. That was just part of the gladiator uniform to go into battle, was your mouth guard. You never played without your mouth guard.
So Dan Campbell is pumped up more so than ever. Brian Branch says, he's just walking around, shaking everybody, kind of razzing everybody up a little bit, having a little bit more fun, but with a serious tone, just letting everybody know, man, it's time to do your job. And I think that is the most important takeaway out of this entire season, that when you look at what the Lions have accomplished and how they have gotten this far over the last couple of seasons, is making each and every one of these players on the team directly responsible for themselves, having self-accountability, and making sure that each player is held to that same standard. Do your job. It's 3 simple words. Just do your job. The guy next to you is going to do his job. The guy to the left of you is going to do his job. The guy behind you is going to do his job. And before you know it, right, like Dan Campbell always says, I almost went into Dan Campbell's speech right there. Before you know, we're going to drag you out deep into the water. You know where I was going. So just do your job. It's that simple. And you're not going to get this far, on an NFL roster with a bunch of eyes. It just doesn't happen. You can't have a bunch of independents running around worried about their stats or, I guess, out there gloating about what they do. They have to do their job. And I think we see it all the time with players that are more concerned about themselves. Those teams don't go far. So Brian Branch loves it. Dan Campbell obviously is in the right mood this week, making sure that everybody knows to just do your damn job. What do you think about that?
Yeah. If every player just does their job, there's no issues. everybody, you just concentrate on you. You make sure you're doing what you're supposed to, because for so many years we had so many players that would freelance, and they did it because the guy next to them wasn't doing their job. So when they saw, oh, that guy's not making his gap, I got to cover his gap and my gap, then stuff goes haywire, because then everybody's flowing to somewhere where they're not supposed to be going. And you've seen a much more disciplined defense now with everyone doing their job.
Yeah. Confidence at an all-time high. Obviously, even after all the injuries that we faced, this team has not ever once stared themselves in the mirror thinking that they couldn't do it. I think that was a great statement. He also, he called outside noise rat poison. And it's just poison to their ears, right? You don't want to listen to it. You don't worry about it. You just stay the hell away from it. Don't buy into it. Don't buy into the narratives. Don't buy into the media. Because if you look about anywhere else in the media, other than a lot of your local, media people, this channel, we've been driving, the fact that, yeah, they've got a good team. Jaden does some good things, but they haven't seen a team like this, right? They're not prepared for a team like this. They haven't gone into the deep water. This is their first season doing it. And they're kind of like the Lions last season. They did a lot of wonderful things throughout the year. They had all these improbable wins. 6 come from behind wins, fourth quarter wins, a few last possession wins. And it's eerily similar to the way that the Lions played last year. But I think that their time is going to end on Saturday because they're just not ready yet. Their team is not built. There's not enough depth. I think that maybe next year and the year after, the Commanders are going to be a problem, but not this year. And then Brian also talked about having immaculate vibes, and that's kind of the mentality of the team right now. I thought it was a very cool way of describing how they're feeling right now, is immaculate vibes. I love it. Another term that I'm going to probably try to use now. And lastly, I want to get your thoughts on this. I felt that he gave too much credit to Jaden Daniels. Now, I understand he's played against Jaden Daniels in college, but he said he reminds him of Lamar. And then he said, well, just the way he moves. And I get it. He's a dual threat quarterback. But he also said something that I've been saying this week. We need to force Jaden to use his arm. He said that they need to force Jaden to throw the ball, and they need to shrink the pocket. So very good statements by Brian Branch. Give me your 30 here on Brian.
What an amazing player. I think we stole him in the draft. He couldn't understand why he slid so far. I can't understand why he slid so far. I thought we were going to take him with the pick before. Who did we take? Laporta. I thought we were going to flip-flop those picks. So what an amazing player. And man, somehow he got the Pro Bowl and Kirby got the All-Pro. So we have a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro safety tandem back there. You can't ask for more. You just can't.
We have, I think, the best safety group in the league. Even Ifeatu Melifonwu, the way that he was playing last season, we expected a lot out of him in his fourth year, and riddled by injury. Thankfully, the Lions did what they did and bringing in the corners that they did in free agency and then also in the draft, because that really set the stage to allow Brian Branch to go back to his natural position, which was safety in college. But he has been playing more nickel, and with Amik on the outside now, and Amik, being more involved. Even before Carlton went down, Amik was more involved in that part of the game. So this is shaping up to be, a situation very similar to the Vikings. And I apologize, I did not bring the other audio in today. I wish I did. I will do it tonight, or at some point I will do it, or I'll do a video or something. But I listened to a few different people talk about how the Lions should be, taking care of the Commanders in this game. And one of the things that they said is, and it's something that I've been saying this week too. Obviously, Amik is going to be on Terry McLaurin. Like, he's the guy you have to take care of. But they even went a step further, where I think that they might not double team Terry because you can't give up enough assets to, control Jaden in the run game and the RPO game. They felt like the Lions are going to do very similar defense to what they did in, against Minnesota in week 18. which, I mean, I agree to some points of that. I think it's a great defense to use, but they also thought that the Lions are still going to be very aggressive and in getting after the blitz. I think that we'll use the blitz. I just don't think it's going to be as heavy as it was against Minnesota because of the fact that Jaden has legs and he is this triple threat quarterback. So for me, it's, yep, you want to be aggressive. You want to take your opportunities when you can. You want to get after Jaden when you can. You do want to shrink the pocket, but I don't think that they're going to be blitzing and sending the edge rushers, to just overemphasize, getting after Jaden. I think it's the contain. And I also heard that in, this show as well. I think it was NFL Live from yesterday, that containing Jaden is probably the most important thing so that you do have more assets to take care of the downfield game and the run game, because they're definitely going to be in this pony set, which is going to give the Lions some trouble. And I think that they've got to figure that out first. How can they stop these running backs from just gashing them, down the seam or, off on the boundary, over the middle? I mean, wherever they go, someone's going to have to pick them up. And I think that if you have 3 linebackers in this game too often, that's where we're going to get hurt. And that's where the Commanders are going to try to trap us on the field and go up tempo, no huddle, and get, when they see the defense that they want, that's when they're going to try to attack. And you might see Dan Campbell have to burn a timeout. He might have to burn a timeout because if they get a couple of plays in a row and they're getting down the field and we can't get off the field, that's going to be a problem. If they find the look that they want and trap us, we could be in trouble for a series. So those are all things to pay attention to. Any thoughts on that before we get into some next subjects here? We'll go NFL news next.
Yeah. Dan Campbell, how many times have we got to the end of the first half or the end of the game and he has 2 or 3 timeouts left in his pocket? I think these are the type of situations that he saves them for, not so much for offense. He saves them more for his defense than he does offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, probably. I guess I really never looked at how many he's called offense versus defense. I just think it's a situation now where I've watched some tape on the Commanders. They do like to go up tempo and trap. They really do. Yeah. And that is a situation for us, especially with our linebackers. You've got Alex and Campbell. And I mean, Alex is probably the best one we have in coverage. I don't think that there's any doubt there. Jack Campbell's been getting better. I mean, I'm sure everybody would disagree with me that, when I say that I feel like Jack is not the greatest in coverage. I'm sure that there's many other people that, on the Lions team, coordinators or whomever, that would highly disagree with me. I feel like Jack's getting better year after year. I think his coverage is getting better, but I think far too often he's been kind of put on an island and he gets shook. He still makes a tackle. He still gets involved in the play, but you're giving up 10, 12 yards far too often. Can't happen in this game because 10, 12 yards can turn into a much different situation. Apparently I got cookies on my floor.
How did that happen?
I have no idea.
Breaking news.
No idea. Late nights in the studio. Who knows what I'm eating lately? All right, so let's get into some NFL news. You had some topics here about Lamar, about, speaking about NFL news and in the games this weekend, is there going to be a weather factor?
Yeah. So Lamar says this weekend, no gloves, and how Lamar Jackson plans to handle the coldest game yet. So this weekend in Buffalo, it is projected to be 12 degrees with a wind chill of 2 degrees. So it is going to feel like 2 degrees out this weekend. It's going to be cold. It's going to be nasty, yuck. And they're even calling for a possibility of snow coming off of Lake Erie. And Mr. Lamar Jackson is from the deep south. I think he's from Florida originally. And he's played in 10 cold weather games. This is going to be his coldest weather game. And in the last 4 regular season games that he's played out in the cold, he has a record of 3-1 in games at or below freezing, including last Saturday's 28-14 win over the Steelers. He didn't seem affected by the cold then, as he completed 16 of 21 passes. But for some reason, ESPN and everyone else is trying to make it into a big deal that he's from the South and playing in the cold. So it sounds eerily similar to another quarterback that came from a warm climate that they try to say can't play out in the cold. So I
wonder who that is.
So I just thought it was kind of funny that now they're saying, oh, Lamar can't play in the cold, but he can play in the cold according to all the stats that they're showing in this article.
So he's 3-1 over his last 4 cold games.
Yeah, at or below 32 degrees, and then under 40 degrees in his last 10 games, he's 8-2.
He definitely can play in the cold.
Yeah, so he can play in the cold just fine.
Yeah.
Whether he wears gloves or doesn't wear gloves, it doesn't matter.
And I think it helps that you have, Derrick Henry right behind you.
Yeah, just hand the ball off.
You just got to hand the ball off and you're good. I'm hoping. I mean, my early call on this game is that, I don't think the Ravens are going to win. I think that this is going to be a boat race for sure between these two teams. I think that the Ravens have the better defense. I think the Bills have the better offense.
Yeah.
And I think between those two matching up and clashing, banging heads this weekend, I really feel like the Bills are going to get it done. And it's going to finish out the early narrative that I don't remember if you said the Bills and the Lions in preseason, but that is the game that I felt was going to be the Super Bowl matchup, was the two teams that, they've been close buddies, right? Good friends, not on game day, apparently. The Bills, man, they were nasty. I think that's the game of the century, to be honest with you. The Bills and the Lions.
Yeah, you have two teams that have never won a Super Bowl going to a Super Bowl. That'd be the first time in forever that's happened, and just the media coverage would be bonkers. And then they came into our house and beat us once. Can they beat us twice?
We don't lose 2 games in a row, and I don't think that we're going to lose to an opponent ever twice, in a row. So that's where my 2023 call where I said the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl in 24 is going to have to come to fruition. I hope. I might have gotten the 14-3 call wrong, but I hope my other call is right, that this was our year. So next up, we've got London games, Madrid games to talk about here briefly. So the Lions do not have any international games this year, again, which I'm not mad at all. As much as I'm sure we would love to go traveling and have some fun and see the sights, I'm good. I'm totally good with it. So New York Jets, Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville, they're all going to play in London this year. And the National Football League, the NFL, announced this schedule of games this week. It's going to be at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is the only purpose-built NFL stadium outside of the U.S. I didn't know they built a stadium over there. I thought that they were using the soccer stadiums. That's interesting. So the Jaguars will return to Wembley. They're on a multi-year commitment with the UK, the NFL is. The Jets and the Browns. Let's see. I'm sorry. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the only purpose-built NFL stadium outside of the U.S. They'll host games featuring both the Jets and the Browns, but the Jaguars will go to Wembley this season. So I guess I'm not really excited about any of these teams. But my question is, why did all the bad teams get all the international games? That's what doesn't make any sense. It's like they're not rewarding, but at the same time, I mean, if you're an NFL team, do you really want to travel? Do you really want to go play, in Germany or Madrid or London and have to do all this traveling? I mean, what does that do to you? I guess I really never looked at or studied what happens to those teams throughout the season. Do they come back and lose some games because they're jet lagged and there's a lot of travel? Is the NFL making sure that they have bye weeks, before and after? Is another question. I got someone calling in here. One sec.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll get our first caller this week. The phone number is up on the screen if anyone wants to call in and has a question for Will or myself. So I am just glad as a Lions fan that we don't have a game over in Germany this year, personally myself, because that would mean to go see that Lions game, I would have to travel all the way to Germany. And I mean, going to Germany would be fun and all, but man, that would be an expensive trip to go see a Lions game. And they're already expensive enough.
Exactly. All right. So Madrid, it was the Dolphins, right? Did you cover that at all?
Nope.
So the Dolphins are headed to Madrid. I don't know who they're matched up with. Big shout out to Adam. Just sent $20 to the Cash App. Appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, right on.
Let's get you Montgomery touchdown because we're going to be expecting one hopefully this weekend.
Jared takes the snap, gives it to Montgomery, left side into the end zone, untouched, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
So that's it really for your NFL international news. The Dolphins are headed to Madrid, and then the Jags, the Browns, and the Jets all headed to London. NFL news, what else did you have?
So there's another one. The NFL is set to reevaluate the playoff format. So the NFL has gone through a few playoff formats since the 1970 offseason officially brought the AFL franchises into the fold. 4, 5, 6, and 7 brackets have followed. We are now in year 5 of 7 teams per conference qualifying, and this year brought familiar issues. A 14-3 Vikings team was forced into a road trip to play a 10-7 Rams squad, albeit in Arizona, due to the Los Angeles area wildfires. But this was not the only game in which a home team carried a worse record. The Buccaneers and Texans each hosted opponents. The Commanders and Chargers, who carried worse records than the visitors held. Houston prevailed against the AFC's LA franchise, while the Washington Commanders defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it just goes on to say the league will take another look at its seeding format this coming offseason. Rather than award home games to the 4 division winners, the NFL would look at giving them to the 4 teams with the highest win percentages overall. This would resemble how the NBA seeds its playoffs, though it's worth noting proposals along these lines have not made it too far in the past.
So this is coming through Yardbarker, right?
Yep.
And I couldn't really tell from this article if this individual is just stating that they think it's going to happen, or that they're going to think about, the NFL is going to think about it, or it's already happening, like they're already talking about it more. Was this an opinion piece, or was this a factual piece? Mm-hmm. You know, I mentioned a couple weeks ago, you know, when we saw that, you know, the NFC North was putting, you know, 2-14, you know, or 14 and a 15 win team, you know, into the playoffs, and only one of them obviously was going to have a home game. It's kind of weird, right? When you have teams that play as well as they do and they get shafted. You know, this whole format really changed. What, 5 years ago? Did you talk about that? About yep. 5 years ago, when they started putting 7 teams in from each conference. Yep. And that's really kind of changed the dynamic. And I'm glad they added more teams, but how do you reformulate the playoff plan? You know, I don't know how you can really do it. I mean, it's something that I'm obviously interested in. I don't think that you should have, you know, a 15 win team or a 14 win team not having a home game. You know what I mean?
It's crazy, but those better teams didn't win in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah. So do you think the Vikings, okay, so let's say that the Vikings, they changed it and the Vikings get to host the Rams. Do you think it would have changed the outcome of that game at all?
I'm sorry, repeat that last part.
Do you think if we changed the seating this year and the Vikings hosted the Rams, do you think it changes the outcome of the game at all?
I don't know. But Mr. Thomas is pretty emphatic here, saying that the winning the division does matter or must matter. I think that has to matter. I mean, you have to win your division and you get a home game, but you have all these wild card games that, I mean, I just don't see how a 14-win team can go on the road to a 10-win team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it should almost be ranked by division or best schedules, or not best schedules, the biggest win record. They're guaranteed a home game, regardless if you won your division or not. I think that's the only way that they could look at it. Not that I'm in favor of that, because again, I don't want the Lions to go 14-3 or 13-4 and have the fifth best record in the NFL and not get a home game, by winning their division, or you just guaranteed the first home game, and then if you go up against a team that has a better record, you have to go on the road for the second game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how they fix it. I say just leave it alone. It should matter that you won your division. Even if you're 7-9, yeah, if like the year that the Seahawks made it in at 7-9 before we went to the 17 games. And so the Seahawks make it in at 7-9, and what do? They won a playoff game.
Right.
So that part of it, if they always lost, then I would be on the other side of the coin. I'd be saying, okay, let's switch this up, but I think it matters to win your division, even if you have a losing record.
Yep. So there's some, Ryan Van Valkenburg has a statement here from Bobby Wagner.
That was fake.
On what's that?
That was fake. It was proven to be fake. It's something that came out on X. Somebody put it out on one of those fake accounts.
So he didn't say this on 106.7 The Fan?
Yeah, it was a fake thing.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's good news. But even if it was true, who cares? Who cares what Bobby Wagner thinks? We know that Goff is having a great year, and he's not scared of any defense. Hasn't been all season.
Yeah.
All right, what's next on our list here?
Oh, let's see.
Let's get into some Lion stuff. It's after 9 a.m.
Okay.
We're going to do that right when we come back. Quick word from C3 Mitts. Introducing Better the Hunt Technologies and C3 Mitts, the ultimate hunting and multi-use glove system for hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. Now, C3 Mitts are designed to keep your bare hand protected and warm no matter what the weather throws at you. The patented attachment system was designed to keep your hand on target with the ultimate feel of comfort, confidence, and control. The triple layer barrier of moisture wicking material combined with 200 grams of thin-slit insulation locks in the heat, but not the moisture. That hot hands pocket adds extra heat when the temps dip below freezing. Rain or snow, no problem for C3 Mitts. The durable outer shell is water resistant and windproof, shielding your hands from the elements. C3 Mitts has solved the cold, stiff, and shaky hand syndrome that all hunters have faced, causing you to miss opportunities on your hunt. Whether you're stalking your prey, chopping wood, or simply enjoying a winter's day, C3 Mitts have got you covered. So this winter, keep your hands warm and your adventures going strong with C3 Mitts. C3 Mitts, warmth, comfort, confidence, and control. I guarantee it, or your money back. Make sure you visit c3mitts.com right after the show. Okay, so I want to get into this next subject about Dan Campbell. Kind of going off topic here, and then we're going to, the last, 30, 40 minutes of the show, I'm going to get into some game prep. We've kind of been talking game all week and given a few tidbits left and right, as to what's going on in this game. But this article that I saw on Dan Campbell out of the New York Times from The Athletic, I thought it really hit the nail on the head here about Dan and about the genius of Dan Campbell. Quote, he's the best leader I've ever been around, end quote. I'm pretty sure that was Jared Goff that mentioned that. So it begins, this is on January 15th, and it talks about Dan Campbell slammed his coffee down, startling everyone on the video call. Quote, I want this job, is what he said. Now, at this time, there were 7 head coaching vacancies in the winter of 2021, and only one team apparently was crazy enough to call Dan Campbell. Only Campbell was crazy enough to think he could save the Detroit Lions. So what if he was a bit excitable? An NFL tight end for a decade, and then an assistant coach for another decade. Campbell was a throwback in a league where the brainy offensive whiz had become all the rage. Coaches were supposed to mumble cliches in front of the media and move on, right? The coach speak. Campbell poured his heart out instead. He here was this football life force spilling his soul during his introductory news conference, talking about kicking in teeth, biting off kneecaps, and fixing a team that hadn't won a thing in 30 years. They mocked him in the beginning. They convinced that he was going to end up just like the rest, run out of town with only a few years because nothing had changed. Nothing ever changed in Detroit. And then they ripped him during the climb for being too honest, for being too out there, for having the nerve to think that some sort of miraculous turnaround was coming. And even as the losses piled up and the critics piled on, the Lions stayed the same old Lions. Coaches who lose 19 of their first 24 games aren't supposed to say things like, quote, "It doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I'll beat your ass," end quote. But Campbell was saying that when the Lions weren't beating anyone. Quote, "People were pointing at him and laughing," end quote, by Taylor Decker. That first season ate at him. One week, Campbell was in tears at the podium. The next, he was calling out his quarterback. Quote, "That's not a professional head coach," end quote by Chris Carter. He said that on Good Morning Football a day after. That's an amateur head coach. And now they're not sure they can trust him, right? Not in big moments. They're worried a mix of aggression and ambition will sabotage everything Dan Campbell's built and cost the Lions a chance at doing what no one ever thought they would. The coach is a late game liability. Some believe. A reckless renegade. Quote, "Just some meathead," end quote, said Jared Goff sarcastically. That's the perception, right? Well, for some, yes. But give me Dan Campbell on the field, I'll take it. Don't put Dan Campbell on my sideline, former Patriots Teddy Bruschi said in December. Detroit Lions fans, there are no more ankles and kneecaps to bite. You're on top. Start playing like it. Start coaching like it. I think he's a bad coach. Rob Parker, a longtime nutcase in the media. This is reckless. You remember when he said this is reckless? I still have the soundbite. Matter of fact, here we go. Where's that? Where's that soundbite at? This is reckless.
This is reckless.
Yeah. You know what's reckless? This is Dan Campbell winning. Here we go.
Yeah.
Is this it?
This is reckless.
Yeah, remember that's Rob Parker. This is reckless.
What
what he's doing is unnecessary and putting his team in harm's way. But if you want Dan Campbell, then you're going to get all of him. And I think that we've grown to realize that as Detroit Lions fans. He's a swaggering Texan who wears his heart on his sleeve and the grit on his hat, and honestly has yet to meet a 4th down attempt that he couldn't talk himself into. This is a man who once watched one of his fake teeth fly out of his mouth during a team meeting. He bent down, he picked it up, and he just kept talking. During his first interview for an assistant coaching job in the league, Campbell found himself out of breath halfway through because, as it turns out, he had gotten up and started tossing chairs around the room and running routes. If nothing else, I think that we understand that Dan Campbell is absolutely authentic. It's taken 4 years, but the Lions have become an embodiment of their head coach. A bunch of ass kickers. Not kissers. A bunch of ass kickers. Everyone else sees the brawn of Dan Campbell, the spicy sound bites, the raucous locker room videos. But ask Dan Campbell's players how he lifted a team with an injury report as long as the War and Peace. That's funny. I've been talking about the War and Peace this year. To the NFC's top seed. And they'll let you in on a secret. It's the brains, too. For Campbell, they say, is as sharp as any mind in the game. He just doesn't care if anyone knows it. And matter of fact, if you remember, so I'm going off script here. If you remember a long time ago, maybe it was the second season, that Brad Holmes, he had mentioned that. He said, everybody thought that this guy was just a meathead and a joke, and that we were okay with that. Like we wanted people to believe that. We did not want to, people to find out how smart Dan really is. To kind of paraphrase what Brad Holmes was putting out there. I mean, I think that we all noticed it. I don't think any of us really knew how intelligent Dan really is, but it's definitely shown up in the last couple of seasons. So, quote, for a while, he's playing into it, Goff says. So what? People think I'm a meathead? They think I'm stupid? Good. I hope they do. I've been around a lot. I've been around a lot of really, really smart coaches in this league, said Jared Goff. He's right there with them. One difference, he's very secure in who he is. There's a lot of coaches who are not. This is how smart he is, Decker said, speaking on the same topic. In our meetings the day before a game, he tells us exactly how we're going to win. And a day later, that's usually what happens. You know how easy it is to buy into that? That was a question. He's the best leader I've been around. So F what everybody else thinks. I wouldn't want to play for another head coach. Every few weeks during a team meeting, Campbell's players will start to look around the room and shrug their shoulders at each other. Their coach is talking and they're not sure where he's going. Sometimes we'll never actually get an answer, says Dan Skipper, laughing. And one morning in December, Campbell was rambling on and on and on about how he used to get into fights all the time as a kid. He used to get bruised and battered, but wouldn't give an inch. He learned that if he could just outlast anyone, he could beat anyone. And pretty soon, no one in the neighborhood wanted to pick a fight with him. Quote, situation didn't matter, Campbell told his team. I always found a way to win. That's part of Campbell's introductory speech that everyone leaves out. Forget the teeth kicking, the kneecap biting. It's the next line that 4 years later remains the most important. And it starts with, before long, we're going to be the last one standing. The Lions sent 21 players to injured reserve this season, including more than half of their defensive starters, and still managed to win a franchise record 15 games in the NFC's top seed. A team that was supposed to crumble, but never did. And you all know that since week 6, I've been there standing. Eric has been there standing and telling everybody this team wasn't going to fall. They were going to continue to do what they've been groomed to do, and that is win at all costs. Be the last team. Their coach wouldn't let them. Campbell has built a group that is mentally tough as any team this side of Kansas City. A team that not only knows it's going to win, but how it's going to win. Quote, there's no one on earth who I've met that's better at knowing how a game is going to go. End quote. All-pro right tackle Penei Sewell. It's unheard of how good he is at that. A day before the Lions hosted the Packers in Week 14, Campbell told his players the game would come down to a 4th down call. Be ready, he warned everybody, because there's a good chance we're going for it. The next night, Goff stood on the sideline next to his coach with 43 seconds left. The score was tied at 31. I think we all remember this part of the game. Lions faced a 4th and 1 from Green Bay's 21-yard line. Just kick the field goal, right? Just kick the field goal. And even the most aggressive analytic model suggested kicking the field goal. But damn, Goff remembered thinking, wishing the offense had run more time off the clock. Campbell looked at him. Let's go, is what he ordered. 1 snap later, they converted. 2 plays later, they clinched the win. That same ethos pushed Campbell to play his starters in a meaningless Week 17 game in San Francisco. Laying down even for a week would contradict everything that Dan Campbell has spent 4 years building in Detroit, which is an identity. Zadarius Smith felt the first day he was in the building. After joining the Lions via midseason trade, the veteran defensive end learned quickly this wasn't the same team he used to beat up on when he was with the Packers. Quote, stack games. Smith and his Green Bay teammates would call matchups with the Lions back then. Because they were prime opportunities to pad stats and bolster Pro Bowl credentials. That is how they thought about us. Stack games. Just to pad their stats. Smith said this, that shit's changed. I mean, not that long ago, people were wearing paper bags over their heads to games. This is what Jameson Williams said. And now we've got the loudest stadium in the league. A 9-year veteran, Taylor Decker, the longest tenured Lion, sensed a shift during Campbell's first season. The holdovers from the Matt Patricia era no longer doubted the coaching staff's messages or motives. The Lions were still losing, sure, but Dan Campbell wasn't flinching. He took it on the chin. Criticism from everyone. To protect us, Decker said. That sounds silly because we're grown men. But when you have a guy in the organization saying, I've got your back, I'll take all the bullets, you just work on getting better, that's really, really powerful. Especially when the guys here don't know who to trust. End quote by Taylor Decker. Then Detroit started winning, and Decker and his teammates learned their coach was more than just a master motivator. He not only had command of the locker room, but an uncanny feel for it too. Goff calls it Campbell's, quote, emotional intelligence. EQ is something that I've been working on myself personally, again, off script, for a few years now. It is hard. It is the hardest thing to learn. And all I could say is the most important thing is before you answer something with emotional intelligence, just shut the hell up and think for 10 seconds before you ever answer anybody. That's the hardest part of EQ. I'm still not great at it. Quote, Dan is as good as it gets with that stuff. That's really hard for some coaches. This was Frank Ragnow. He's so emotionally aware and in tune with every single player here, end quote. It hit Jared Goff during the closing stretch of the first season in Detroit that after 8 straight losses, Dan Campbell stripped then the offensive coordinator, Anthony Lynn, of his play calling duties. And to many observers, a surprise, he took it over himself. Everyone's like, this guy's going to call plays? Not me, but everyone outside the building. This is what Goff was saying. The kneecaps guy? How was he going to call plays? End quote. That's what Jared Goff saw the other side of his coach. Over the headset, Campbell never raised his voice, never spoke too quickly. He oozed a cool and a calm, and then he relayed that into Jared Goff's ears. The Lions won 3 of their final 6 games. Quote, he went from, at least in my ear, this bravado speech guy to steady. He finishes his hand perfectly still. I didn't know he had it in him. End quote. Ben Johnson calls the plays now, but Dan Campbell tweaks the scheme in the days leading up to the games. Like I've always said, again, going off script from this, I've always said that this has been Dan Campbell's, team. It's been Dan Campbell's offense, and this is why I wasn't so worried about losing Ben Johnson. I always felt that Dan had a pulse on everything that this offense was doing. Clearly, that's true. Because according to this, Dan Campbell is tweaking the scheme just days leading up to the game. He'll flip a motion. He'll add an audible if the defense shows cover 2. He'll remind Goff about a blitz beater in case the safety creeps up to the line of scrimmage. He's known for halting a walkthrough, or practice and changing a play on the spot. And then ordering the players to have it down for Sunday. We're calling this one, quote, Campbell will warn. Typically the players say it pays off. Here's another quote. We hear all the time that Johnson is brilliant, and he is. But I'm telling you, Dan is too. Taylor Decker. There's also the tough love. Campbell wouldn't let the players, or himself for that matter, soak in last season's stirring run into the NFC Championship game. 6 months later, on the first day of training camp, he challenged them to get better in every way possible. That's what it would take. He told them to finish the job. Long before injuries ravaged the roster, the coach saw complacency as his team's greatest foe. He refused to let it creep in. It's like little things, like pulling Goff aside after a lousy practice. Quote, if I have a crap day, but no one else thought it was a crap day, he's telling me it's crap, end quote, by Jared Goff. He'll just say, Jared, that wasn't good enough. No players is sacred. Last season, amid a career year for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Campbell summoned the star wideout into his office for a sit-down. The coach played a clip from the previous week's win over the Bucs. St. Brown had whiffed on a nickel blitz. Quote, would rookie Saint do this? Question mark, quote to Dan Campbell. Nope. That's not you, man. That's what Dan Campbell told him. St. Brown shook his head. He knew back in the first season when he was getting fewer targets in the passing game, he'd made blocking a benchmark of his game. And now that he had grown into one of the best pass catchers in the league, Campbell wasn't about to let him slip. A year later, St. Brown grins at the memory. He sees everything, the receiver says. That's what Amon-Ra St. Brown said. He sees everything. Coaches have felt it too. The brute honesty, the unflinching accountability. Calvin Shepard played 8 years in the league and now coaches the Lions linebackers. But what stands out the most is his boss, or about his boss, is he's never seen Campbell use notes when he addresses the team. Quote, it's all raw, it's all authentic, it's all genuine. It's honesty that most coaches wouldn't use in front of the players. And now they'll go upstairs and do it. Then they'll come down and smile in the player's face. End quote by Calvin Shepard. Not in Detroit, where the head man takes it on the chin when necessary. After a week 2 loss to the Bucs, the coach began the following morning staff meeting with 4 words. That one's on me. The moment has stayed with Scotty Montgomery, Campbell's assistant head coach, for months, because after the Lions won 11 straight, Montgomery had this to say, quote, I've never wanted to go harder for a head coach. That is a leader you want in the building with, or you want to be in the building with, and not only that, want to fight with, because you know what he's going to do. Stand up, end quote, by Scotty Montgomery. In that team meeting the day before the Packers game, Campbell singled out 3 players. Quote, we're going to need a big one from you, 16. We're going to need a big one from you, 14. And we're going to need a big one from you, 58. Some stars would bristle at the type of burden, but Lions have come to relish it. It's how Campbell has them wired. He wants a target on his team's back. He knows his men can handle it. Quote by Ben Johnson. He has not shied away from the high expectations. And for a guy who hasn't really been in this position before, I cringe a little bit. But now as I watch it unfold, man, it's a beautiful thing. He knows what our guys are made of. He's probably the best leader I've ever been around. The turnaround started with Goff, whom Campbell called out after a lopsided loss their first year together. Quote, it feels like he needs to step up more than he has, end quote, Dan Campbell said after the 0-6 start. The comments drew heaps of criticism around the league. In reality, the QB was never bothered by it. When that came out, I remember, Sean McVay kind of doing the same thing when Jared Goff was leaving, and he slayed Jared Goff. And when that happened with Dan Campbell, I'm like, oh no, is this going to happen again? What's going to happen to Goff in this situation? But clearly, Jared Goff had enough respect for what Dan Campbell was doing. This went the other direction. In a hurry, the Lions started to win a lot of ball games. Quote, he was right, and I respect that, Goff said. He shoots you straight. Damn right I needed to play better. What people didn't know then was how much Dan believed in me. I still remember him and Brad Holmes calling me after the trade. I'm in a pretty fragile mental state at that point. The world had just turned upside down, right? And Dan's like screaming on the phone, I can't believe we were able to pull off this trade and get you as our quarterback. End quote. Jared Goff, I was like, holy smokes. Haven't heard that in quite some time. Now, Goff's staggering career revival from middling starter on an 0-8-1 team to an MVP candidate for one that's 41-21 since, including the playoffs, mirrors the organization's rise from the league laughingstock to Super Bowl contender. So when injuries threatened to derail Detroit's dream season, Campbell leaned into it. He hadn't built this team to fold. Quote, nobody's going to write our story for us, says Dan Campbell after the December loss to the Bills. There was no doubt that the Lions were hurting. The Eagles and Vikings were hot, threatening to steal the number 1 seed. Skipper, the veteran offensive lineman, remembers watching a few defensive players run onto the field late into the year and muttering to himself, I don't even know who those guys are. And Campbell asked his team who they wanted to be. You have to be made a certain way or you're not even coming here anyway. The fact that you're doubted, you're not good enough. You don't know what you're doing. You're not very smart. You can't process. You're throwing the ball out of bounds on 4th down. Your coach is a meathead, blah, 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 blah. You go through this whole deal, but yet you look at each other and you trust each other. And Dan Campbell trusted them and they trusted him. 3 wins later, including a winner-take-all finale against the Vikings, Dan Campbell slipped on a baby blue t-shirt that read, ready to roll. In the victorious locker room at Ford Field, the Lions had repeated as division champs and clinched the NFC's top seed for the first time in franchise history. Their story was still in their hands. Quote, you look like you remember who the F you are. The coach screamed at his players. That's because he never let them forget. What an amazing article and illustration of the Detroit Lions and who they are. Zach Kiefer from The Athletic put this together. And when I read this, man, it almost brought me to tears. I mean, being a Lions fan for so many seasons, 4 decades, ever since I was 4 years old. And I've said that story before. I only know that because of pictures, right? Tell me that story just didn't, it encapsulated everything that we've been through. All of the doubt. And people think that we're going to lose on Saturday night. This is our story. It has yet to be written, but they're going to write it themselves. I love that. And I think it's absolutely true. The only players that can beat this team is themselves. So I just went on for, 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
Eric, what the hell do you think about all that, man?
All right. There's one thing that's missing from this article. And it's something that came up this week in a couple of podcasts and these national pundits picking the game this weekend. And that is, if you go back to when the Detroit Lions were 3-13-1, the following preseason, we were chosen to be on the program Hard Knocks on HBO. And Dan Campbell gave a speech one day about how he wants to drag teams out into the water. And not just the shallows. He wants to take them out into the deep water, and he's going to make them swim until they can't swim anymore. And then he's going to drown them. And that is what is going to happen this weekend with the Commanders. I was watching the Stinkin' Truth podcast yesterday, and they were hyping up Jaden Daniels, talking about how great he is and all that. But what they said at the end was that they were going to drag them out into the deep water. And they may hang with us for the first half, kind of like the Vikings did. But by the time you get to that third quarter and the time you get to that fourth quarter, That's it. You're just not going to be able to swim anymore. Your doggy paddle's just not going to work. You're going to start sinking, and the Lions are going to put you under. They're slowly going to push your head down, and that's it. You're done for. You just can't hang with the Lions. We're going to have too much pressure. Our running game's going to be too good. And Dan Campbell has manifested all of this, and it is going to happen. That's how we're going to beat the Commanders this weekend. We're just going to take them to the deep water, and we're going to see how well they can swim.
So there's actually a second article that was put out by The Athletic, by Jacob Robinson. So I just put the first article in the chat, so you guys could read it for yourself or share it, with your Lions fans or whomever you want to share it with. Great article. I would obviously recommend reading it for yourself. Sometimes it's hard to read quotes and to, really put it into story format. I tried. Hopefully I did okay.
You did excellent, man.
So this next one has got some similar stuff. I'm not going to read it. I'm going to let you guys, read it for yourselves. So here is the second article. I'll drop it in the chat. Check it out after the show. Because now we've got to get into the rest of the game prep. And so last night I started going over some of the highlights. But before I get into any of the highlights in the game prep, let's get into... Well, Eric, do you have anything quickly that you want to share, that's newsworthy or anything before we get into this?
Let me see what I had here. Just that weather might play a factor in some of these outdoor games this weekend. They're looking at snow in Buffalo, and they're looking at snow for the Eagles game. So that Eagles game is going to be interesting. It might come down to who has the better run game.
Man, that one can go either way, right?
Yep.
It really could. So before we get into the insights of the game, let's do our second highlight, business highlight. And this is up by Eric. So, Eric, I'll let you kind of run with it and tell us what's going on here.
Yeah.
Let me get it up here. So as you can see, that big, beautiful mug there, Eric. So tell us what it's all about, Sugar Daddy.
Yeah, so Sugar Daddy is like 2 blocks from my house. They're a local business, and I got a phone call yesterday, and it said Sugar Daddy's Bakery, and I'm like, why are they calling me? I usually call them to get lunch, and so they call me, and they're like, hey, we're doing this Lions themed shake and Lions themed cookies and cakes and stuff on Saturday for the NFC Championship game. Can you put on all your Lions stuff and come down to the bakery and let us take a couple pictures of you? I'm like, okay. So I put on my Lions stuff. I went down there with my Lions truck, and they ended up doing a whole little photo shoot with me for the bakery to help get the bakery going this Saturday and get people to go out there and buy some of their stuff. They have awesome food, awesome pastries and cookies and cakes. A place I shouldn't be going to too often because of my diabetes, but every once in a blue moon, we like to visit those guys and give them a little business. And that shake yesterday, oh my God, that thing was awesome.
Just to clarify, it's for this Saturday, not the NFC Championship. Yep. It's for this Saturday, the divisional round.
A divisional round, and they'll do it again next Saturday or next Sunday for the NFC Championship game too, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's too bad I'm nowhere near Brimley, so Eric's gonna have to pick up some cookies on his way.
There you go.
To make sure he brings them down here for Saturday. All right, let's get into some game breakdown here. So for those of you that didn't make last night's show, and again, I apologize. This week's been kind of weird. Only got on Thursday night. I wanted to get on twice this week. I will be on later today doing film review around 5 o'clock, and then hopefully we'll be back on tonight with Rio Robinson. So the Commanders content creator that has been throwing some flame all week is going to join Rocked On tonight. That's the plan. Hopefully it happens. We were supposed to have all 22 on today. Hopefully, right, we get a chance to do it next week and talking about the next game. So I put a couple of things in this morning, or last night about my X factor of the game, how the Commanders can win, how the Lions can win. So while I'm going through this, Eric, think about your X factor. But for me, among all the Lions injuries this season, it seemed like, the running back, David Montgomery, was headed to IR. Like, that's just what we thought. It was going to happen. there's no way he's going to come back from this, but he did it. And that injury wasn't as bad as it was first feared. Still a bad injury, but he was able to rehab it in as little as 5 weeks. And the Lions obviously are extremely confident that he's going to have a role in tomorrow night's game. He was a huge part of the Lions offense this season. Providing this 1-2 punch with Jahmyr Gibbs has just been explosive all year. I mean, well over 2,000 yards rushing, over 32 touchdowns for this pair is incredible. And Montgomery added 775 yards, 12 touchdowns, 185 carries this season over 14 games. Had he not gotten injured, we would have had 5 guys with 1,000 or over 1,000 yards. So it's really hard to stop the Lions' rushing attack, right? We've had one of the best run games in the league now for probably 2 seasons. Now, there's been some guys in the league that have had individual success, like Saquon Barkley and a couple of others, but it's this dynamic duo to me that is definitely my X factor into tomorrow night's game. And again, it's the same thing that I said yesterday. Sometimes your best offense or your best defense is your offense. If we can keep our offense on the field and we can milk these guys, 10, 12, 14 play drives, you're taking 7, 8, 9 minutes off the clock, and you're getting points. That, to me, is the biggest X factor out of this game. And that's going to have to be relying upon the shoulders of Jahmyr Gibbs and however much David Montgomery can contribute. We just don't know, if there is a little gamesmanship going on here, if David Montgomery is really going to play, or is he going to come in and block, or we don't know yet. We really don't know. I doubt there's gamesmanship, though. I think that he's going to play a lot. That's my X factor for this game. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, the run game, playing keep away from the Commanders. Best defense is your offense at times, and I think that this is going to be a big way that we can help, or that will help win this game. So, Eric, what would you say your X factor is on the offensive side of the football?
On the offensive side of the football, I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. Because Gibbs is going to be the one that we're going to have to rely on, because I only think that Montgomery is going to be on a pitch count. So he is going to be limited, I think, even though he thinks that he feels better now than he did to start the season. I still don't think they're going to risk the biscuit just for this game. So I'm really thinking it's going to have to be on Jahmyr Gibbs' shoulders for the offense. And I think that Jared Goff is going to have to be very smart with the football this week. 2 weeks ago against the Vikings, he had a couple of throws that were very lucky didn't get picked off, and he had to get picked off anyway. So those need to be cleaned up. And I expect a huge amount to be put on Jared Goff's shoulders and Jahmyr Gibbs' shoulders for the offense.
I obviously agree. So, Devin, I just put the link in there. Talking football is just getting going. So, it'll take a couple of months for it to really get rolling. But there's some things in there that you'll be able to enjoy from last week, and then this week's podcast should have been or will be uploaded today. So we'll follow up on that later on today. But anyway, yeah, give it a ride. Check them out. It'll only get bigger and better. I can promise you. These guys are extremely intelligent. They've been doing it for 6 years, and they have some of the best knowledge around football that I have seen from a podcast perspective. Never on YouTube, to the degree that they're about to be. But they've been doing it for a long time, and you can also find them on Apple and Spotify. All right, so on the defensive side of the football, we need an X factor here as well. And for me, I think this week it is, as much as I would love to say it's the defensive line, containing Jaden Daniels, I think, is a giant key to unlocking this game. But I don't think it's going to be the defensive line that needs to be the X factor. And I don't think it needs to be the DBs that need to be the X factor. I think it relies on the middle of our defense that has kind of been, no pun intended, our Achilles heel of this season. No pun intended there to Malcolm Rodriguez. So we need a big game out of Jack and Alex. Big game. We need them to really be the leaders of this defense from the inside out. Like I've said, this whole week, I do also believe that this game is going to be heavily reliant upon Aaron Glenn putting the DBs in a position to win and have success. If you set the guys up for success, I know that we have the ball players on this squad that are going to be able to, shut down Jaden to a degree, but force him. Just like Brian Branch said, you got to force this guy into throws, right? You got to force him into mistakes. You do need to squeeze the pocket a little bit, but contain is what I think is going to get it done in between Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone. I think we're going to see a lot of those two paired up in this game. I don't think we're going to see a ton of 3 linebacker sets in this game. Those guys have to play perfect. I mean, near perfect in this game, and I think that they will. What do you think about your X factor on the defense?
Yeah, I'll pick out Jack Campbell this week. He's got to get his coverage skills up and going. But the thing I think we will use as our X factor isn't a single person. It's our third down and red zone defense. So the Detroit Lions on third down rank number 1 in the NFL, giving up 32.4% on third down. Number 1 in the league. So our third down defense and our red zone scoring defense is number 7 in the league. And we've given up about 50% to opposing offenses. And I saw a stat yesterday that the offenses for the Detroit Lions and the Washington Commanders score on 50% of their drives. And they are the only 2 teams in the NFL that have scored on 50% or more of their drives this season. So I think that limiting them on third down and having that, I hate to say it, bend but don't break defense, and limiting them when they get in the red zone is what is going to help us win this game. And then ball control on offense, we have to win the time of possession and we have to win the turnover battle.
Yeah, turnovers is huge. I mean, from a perspective of X factors, obviously, I'm looking at the player personnel right now. And, offense, you've got the running game, defense, you've got the linebackers. But I think when you go a step further, like you just did, some of the keys to the game is definitely the turnover battle. One, we have to play clean. We cannot give the Commanders extra opportunities. That means Jared Goff is going to have to protect the ball. Yes, when he dirts the ball or he throws the ball out of bounds, it's because he's trying to retain, the Detroit Lions to be able to have an opportunity to score and not give the Commanders an opportunity, to get extra points on us when they don't deserve it, right? They've got to do that on their own possessions. So keeping a clean game is super important. On the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, I think that this is where, Kirby, Brian Branch, this is where they need to be, ready, right? They have to be in the right position. Again, it has to be the right defense. If we have a too high safety look going on, yeah, I think that gives us a better opportunity not only to take care of McLaurin, but then putting your guys in a position to make a play. Now, Kirby's made a lot of interceptions this season in the single high look, but the single high look, I feel, is also what has allowed us to give up the most yards. The most wide open yards this season is in the single high look. So again, I feel like we won't be in that look as often. There will be times, and I hope that it's not as easy to pick out that when we're in a single high look, we're running a zero blitz, right? I hope that they don't give that away, because it also feels like the times we run a zero blitz has been out of a single high look. So just a few keys again on the defense. We have to come away with an interception tonight, possibly, right? Possibly. Doesn't mean it's the end all be all. Now, yesterday I said that Kirby's going to get one. I did play, like Riley said, I played the reverse psychology role the last few weeks of the season because I called, Kirby to have an interception in 3 games, and he got it in those 3 games. And then the next 2 games, which was a few games after his last interception that I called, he didn't get one. So then I played the whole reverse role, and I said he won't get one, or I'm not going to call that he's going to get one, and he end up getting one. So this week I'm going back to the Rocks Locks, where I think that Kirby is going to have a big game, but I'm going to go bland with it. I'm going to say somebody on this defense is going to get a pick. Somebody. We're going to force Jaden into making a bad decision. And as I highlighted last night, Jaden tends to throw right down the middle of the field or right behind the line of scrimmage. So the best opportunity is going to be in the center of this field. Or if Jaden forces a bad throw to his left, where he doesn't throw a ton, that could be a BB ball. Or it could be an iffy ball, because Iffy's been on the right side of the defense more often. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But turnovers is big. Obviously, we have to take care of the ball. We have to try to force it on the other side.
How about a Jack Campbell interception? We haven't had one of those yet.
Hey, however they get it done, I'm good. Anybody comes up with a big play. Commanders. How can the Commanders win? Well, this one's more simple to me. It's called hopium. They need some hope. The Commanders are overmatched in this game. I truly believe that. I think that if you listen to the right people, in this space, in the national media space, I should say, there's some of them that have made it very clear that the Lions are the much better team. There's been a lot of different dynamics thrown around this week, pumping up Jaden Daniels because of what he's done as a rookie. But I thought that there was that great quote that I mentioned yesterday by Marine, where, saying that if that ball just bounced the other way on that last field goal, that the narrative would have switched to the pressure was too big for Jaden, that it was too much for the rookie. They wouldn't be saying all the things that they're saying right now. But this is how media works. They latch on and drive narratives just to do it. It's not necessarily truth. It's not necessarily honest. It's not necessarily transparent. It's just garbage. It's filler. It's fodder. They're just trying to drive their narrative. I think Jaden's a hell of a quarterback. You guys know that he was my number 1 pick out of the draft for the quarterback position this year. And I think it's hard to believe, that a rookie has done what he has done or had the kind of impact that he has had this season. It does not happen very often, but 2 seasons in a row now, CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels have really taken the league by storm. It's fun to watch. The Lions defense has struggled at times, according to, everybody in the national media with immobile quarterbacks or dual threat quarterbacks. I don't believe that. The only one that we had trouble with was Josh Allen. We've had a ton of injuries. We've also seen, Daniels put up 5 touchdown passes against a much better Eagles defense in week 16. But you know why they won that game? It wasn't so much because of what Daniels was doing, even though it was part of what he was doing. It was because the Eagles didn't have Jalen Hurts. He was out of that game like almost from the beginning. After he scored 3 touchdowns, he was out. So had Jalen Hurts been in that game, they don't win that game. They're probably not even here right now. So I think that's how the Commanders win. It's hope, right? They have to have hope, and they're going to have to put this on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. They're going to have to find space over the middle of this defense with this pony package, right, that we talked about yesterday. They use it quite often. It is a very difficult package to defend against, especially in the RPO system. That's the only chance that they have, is that they're able to get after our linebackers and find these mismatches in the middle of the defense. And they better hope they can find it. So that's how I think the Commanders can win. Any points you want to add to that?
Well, us as Lions fans, we remember going through all of this. New quarterback, new coach, new GM, having to rebuild, having to make it. And there's an arc in the NFL. And that arc usually includes, once you make it to the playoffs, you usually you lose in either the wild card or the divisional round. And then you make it back to the playoffs and you make it a little further. and then you make it back to the playoffs again, and then you make it to your final destination, the Super Bowl. Well, there's a lot of parallels between this Commanders team and the Lions team, and you see it. You know, they got a new coach, they got a new everything, new quarterback, new GM, new everything, and they're starting to put it together. Now, they did it a little faster than the Lions, and they're drinking the hopium. You know, they're drinking the Commanders Kool-Aid, and there's something that they started doing, and they're calling them the Cardiac Commanders because of them coming back last second against the Bears with a miracle Hail Mary because Stevenson was off waving at the crowd. And there's been a few games like that where they come back and they win at the very end. They've won 6 games in the last 10 seconds of the game where they were either tied or trailing with 10 seconds to go. Just an amazing stat. So that tells you they need the paddles to keep them going at the end of the game. So they are the Cardiac Commanders, but I don't like them stealing that name from the Cardiac Cats that were always the Cardiac Cats back when we had Matt Stafford winning all those fourth quarter comebacks, you know. But what I know is that all of those fourth quarter comebacks that the Detroit Lions had for all those years with Matt Stafford, they never added up to anything. We never won playoff games with Matt Stafford. We never accomplished any of our major goals winning that way. So that's why I don't see the Cardiac Commanders coming back against the Detroit Lions. We're going to take them into the deep water where they have not been yet this season, and we're slowly going to impose our will on the Commanders.
Good takes. How could the Lions win? I think it's pretty simple for us, man. We talked about it a minute ago, that this is going to be on the backs of the running game. But I think that we need to score plenty of points. I said it yesterday that if this is going to be a boat race, I think that we have the faster boat. I don't think that there's anyone that would disagree right now that the Lions have the best offense in the league. I mean, we clearly do. We did. We had the highest scoring offense in the NFL this season. The Commanders were 18th in points allowed and 13th in yards allowed. Dan Quinn is sharp of a defensive mind as he has been. The Commanders don't look like the type of defense that can really slow down Detroit and what is a very diverse aerial attack and ground game. The Lions don't want to have to put Jared Goff in a position tonight to put the ball up, 30 plus times. I don't think Jared's going to put up the ball more than 30 times. I really don't. We know that when you put up the ball more than 30 times in a game, the probability for throwing an interception is likely. And the ball, being put up over 40 times a game, it's like tenfold. We've seen what has happened with Jared this season when he's had to put up the ball a ton. Interceptions are going to happen. It's just the law of probability. It's going to happen. So we don't want to see Jared Goff putting up the ball more than 30 times tonight or tomorrow night. I think that he's probably going to be in that 25 attempt range, and then the rest of it's probably going to be on the ground. Even if he needs to get into 25 attempts, I don't even know if it needs to go that far. But as long as our offensive output remains average this weekend, just average with what we've been averaging the entire season, I think we win this game running away. I absolutely do. Yesterday, I put out a score prediction last night, and it will be revamped and finalized, tomorrow morning. But my initial score prediction was 31-23. The Lions win by 8, and they get really close to their average of where they've been all season on the offense, which I think the average is Eric, is about 33 points a game.
Yep.
So I think that's where the Lions have to hang. And, when you look at what Vegas is doing, you look at the average of both teams. That's kind of where they're picking this game. It's just based off the average. The only difference is, I think that they're giving the home crowd an extra point here. And that's the difference in this game. Obviously, the third X factor for me is us. It's the fans. We have to do it right. We need to shut the hell up when Jared is in the huddle. No more Jared Goff chants until, do it when the Commanders are in the huddle, right? That's when you do it. I think that'll shake Jaden, is when he's hearing Jared Goff's name being screamed when he's in the huddle. When Jared's in the huddle, we got to be quiet. I get it. Like when we have really good plays, we want to say Jared Goff, but we just got to be quiet. We got to let these guys work. And then on defense, we just got to go nuts. The minute they start to come into that huddle, you've got to get loud. And you got to stay at that level until that ball is hiked. And then you can kind of quiet down and save your voice for the next play. I know how it is for me. I mean, I've got extenuating circumstances with, surgeries in my throat area, but my voice is usually gone by halftime. So don't be afraid of bringing something with you that's going to make some noise. Obviously, you want to read the rules for, Ford Field, but there's plenty of things that you can use to make noise.
You want to know what's funny? One of my Facebook friends, he's a season ticket holder, and he's from up here, and he found a wooden turkey call, and he says it's loud as heck, and they let him bring it in, and he uses it at every game. I'm like, oh man, we all need to get turkey calls.
That can't be legal. But you know what? We've been to places, Eric, like in San Francisco, they use these little kazoo things that.
Yeah, they had them all over the place.
Yeah, and so that to me is like, how can you allow that stuff in? But again, it's up to the stadium, even though there's clear NFL rules that state that you can't use any noise makers.
Yeah.
But a lot of stadiums do. A lot of people do.
Stadiums, they use those inflatable things that they whack together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see how you can't do that, because you could take 2 empty cups and whack them together. Just got to empty the cup first. And dude, the thing that I think works best is when everyone is standing and everyone is cheering. Bend over a little bit while you're screaming and bang on the seat back in front of you.
What did you just say, Eric? Bend over while you're screaming.
Yeah.
Hold on. You might want to rephrase that one a little bit.
I'm serious. So just bang, 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 bang on that seat back. And you can hear it when someone does that in your section or the next section over. You can hear it when 2 or 3 people start doing that. So that is carrying down to the field. And just banging on the seat back in front of you, it works. And I'm telling you, if you got rings on, whatever, it makes even more noise. And that can help save your voice a little bit when you're screaming your guts out on every play. And when the offense comes out on the field, that is when the Jared Goff chants are the worst. Let it go. And then we have to stop screaming when Skipper reports, because Skipper's out there every time. Calm down. We need to be able to hear. That's when they need to be able to hear, is when Skipper is reporting. So I know everybody wants to cheer that Skipper reported, but we gotta be quiet.
Well, it's going to take one more, right? The whole season has been about it takes more. We're just one more day away from watching our Detroit Lions move on to the next phase of the season. And so let's end with a little bit of insights on the game here. Let me pull them up. I went through a few of these last night, but I'm going to start again with Terry McLaurin, because prior to these insights coming out, and prior to listening to some people yesterday, talking about Terry McLaurin and the job that Amik Robertson is going to have to do in this game, I felt that the best opportunity for the Detroit Lions to really try to remove what the Commanders have established themselves to do this season has been on the back of Terry McLaurin. He went from an average of a 4.5, 5 touchdown guy, 1,000 yards over the last 6 seasons or so or more, to 14 touchdowns this season. That's huge. I mean, he's put up 84 points he's put up this season when we used to average about 24 to 30 points a season. So that's huge. But he's also been targeted on a career high 28.7% of his routes
and he's averaged 2.8 yards per route when facing off coverage. And off coverage is defined as 5+ yards of cushion. Is the 7th most among wide receivers with at least 150 such routes this season. The problem is when he faces press coverage, which is less than 1 yard of cushion, he's had a career low 30.5% of his routes, where he recorded just 18.1% target rate and an average of only 1.2 yards per route run when facing the press, which is the 6th fewest among wide receivers with at least 100 such routes. So he goes from a top 7 in the league in off press, off man coverage to a bottom 6 of the league in press coverage. Why does this matter? Well, the matchup that the Lions obviously emphasized in Week 18 is Amik Robertson, and aligning him on a press, coverage against, Justin Jefferson. Obviously, it removed Justin out of the game completely. And let's be real, Terry McLaurin is no Justin Jefferson. He's a great receiver, but he's not Justin Jefferson. So putting Amik on Terry McLaurin obviously is the key, and that's kind of what was shared yesterday by a few outlets, is it makes more sense to put Amik here. And obviously with Terry and Arnold coming back off of this injury, he's kind of been, lined up on the second guy. So the De'Ami Brown or the Chase Brown, that's going to be his assignment on Saturday night. But this perfectly aligns with how the Lions played their defense, which they love to be in press. They love man coverage. And I think that this is going to be a huge benefit. Now, a couple of outlets went a step further and thought that, okay, maybe the Lions do exactly what they did against JJ, which is double down or shade, right? 1.5. Could be a great possibility that we see that. And I wouldn't be mad at it at all. The only concern that I have is if we start to commit too many assets to Terry McLaurin, obviously that limits our ability to stay keyed on Jaden Daniels and the run game or the 2 running backs in the pony situation. I don't want to lose sight of that, right? If I was a coach, I wouldn't want to lose sight of that if I was Aaron Glenn. But I think that this aligns more with what we do well and what they don't do well. Press man is going to help us here. And then also for Jaden here. Jaden uses a design rollout package on 7.4% of his dropbacks, which is the 14th highest in the NFL. Now, that makes it sound like a lot, right? But he's kind of parked right in the middle. So even though this is an RPO system, when you look at how many rollouts he's doing, it's not like Josh Allen where he was rolling out all the time. He's completed 20 of 23 passes on designed rollouts. So this is a very high completion rate for him when he's rolling out. He's completed it for 262 yards, only 1 touchdown, but also 1 interception, which resulted in a league high 11.4 yards per attempt this season. He also recorded 8 more scramble runs that were designed rollouts than any other quarterback, and he gained 73 yards, scoring once. And he also converted 9 additional first downs when he rolls out. This stat just came up today. So one of the things that I mentioned yesterday and throughout the week is contain, right? You want to put your edge rushers, your defensive ends, in a position to control the rollout. If you allow Jaden to roll out because you crash down, right? You crush the can and you crash down, Jaden is too good, too quick. He is going to turn his back and spin, and he's going to be gone. And that is where, again, if you're doubling up on Terry McLaurin and he rolls out on Terry McLaurin's side, now you've got 2 assets on Terry. You've got your edge rushers, crashing down. Now you're relying upon Jack and Alex. Well, if they're in some sort of a pony and those running backs have now pushed your linebackers downfield, it's a wide open ball field for Jaden Daniels. That is why I am so confident that you can't afford to really crash on Jaden. Contain, take your opportunities when you can get them, and try to get the sack, right? You try to stop him, get the TFL. But if we focus on it, I think he's going to carve us up. And I hate to even say that, but the stats don't lie. and patterns do matter in this game. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I truly believe that the Washington Commanders are a mix of the last 2 seasons of the Detroit Lions. They're 12-5. They won a few games maybe they shouldn't have won, but they got a lucky bounce one way or the other, and they're not quite ready to move on to the next step, and that would be the NFC Championship game. So I think they're close. They're just not quite there yet. A lot of parallels with the Lions, and this Jaden Daniels kid, he looks amazing, but I think it's going to be another year or two before he's the MVP caliber quarterback that he's going to grow into.
All right, a couple more stats here, a couple more insights. And I just got confirmation that the Talking Football podcast was just emailed, so we'll get it up here in a little bit.
All right.
I'm sure they've got a lot of great content. Obviously, I haven't reviewed it myself, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great content about this weekend's games. We'll make sure that we get a lot of it out today. So let's focus on one more thing for Jaden. So Jaden has recorded 79 scramble runs this season, the most by any quarterback in the season since 2016. He's gained a league-high 600 yards and scored once on those scramble runs, which resulted in the second-highest success rate, 70.9% among quarterbacks with at least 25 scramble runs this season. He's scrambled 14 times out of an empty formation for 163 yards and recorded 6 explosive gains of 10-plus yards and converted another 9 first downs. So I'm a little bit less worried about him scoring, right? If patterns and stats matter, he's only scored once out of those 79 scramble runs. The issue is he's getting first downs. And when you get first downs, you're giving your team another opportunity. And that's where the ball's, getting pushed out to other players to make the play. And that's where they do score is, through their other players. Just have to limit this guy. Absolutely just have to limit this guy. Brian Robinson Jr. So he ran between the tackles on 67.4% of his carries this season, the third highest rate among running backs with at least 100 carries. He was contacted behind the line of scrimmage at the 5th highest rate, 45.2%, and managed to gain just the 6th fewest yards after contact per carry of 2.7. With it, for any running back with at least 50 carries, that is what these stats are measured against. This gives me a little bit of hope, right? I mean, Brian Robinson Jr., if we know that he's blowing through the tackles, again, that's another reason why you don't want to lose that containment. You want to, bottle up all of these different gaps as much as you can. The Lions play this gap and a half scheme. And to be able to, you're never going to be able to fill all the gaps. Like, you just can't. But by playing this gap and a half scheme and making our defensive line more responsible, for a half next to them, they've got their gap and then a half next to them, and then the guy next to them has half a gap and the gap opposite of them. You got 2 guys covering 3 gaps. So if we have 4 guys on the line, you're covering 6 gaps. So that is where your linebackers have to be aligned to fill the rest. Or your Brian Branch dropping down into the box, or your Iffy dropping down. They have to be able to fill the rest of the gaps. For Brian Robinson here, though, the fact that they're getting contact behind the line of scrimmage at the 5th highest rate, that tells me that their offensive line obviously is giving up way too much. But how can it be used against you is the question. And the way that it can be used against you is if they sucker us into trying to get pressure behind the line of scrimmage to, bottle up the run game. Once you kind of get sucked in, it's hard to get back out. And you're talking defensive, linemen that are not the most nimble of foot. And that's where Jaden is going to have an opportunity to do some damage. So I'm more confident that we should be able to contain the run game. Now, Austin Eckler is a totally different dynamic. He can do, things way differently, obviously, than what Brian Robinson can do. He's a lot faster, in my opinion, than Brian Robinson. They can argue that one out themselves. But I just don't see where their run game is as explosive as what people are making it out to be. It's more Jaden Daniels that is the more explosive, portion of this run game. So I guess when you look at this, their offensive line rankings, which I'm going to try to look up right now, is where we're going to have to rely on these matchups. You know, how can we take advantage if we are going to, you know, rush 4 guys or 3 guys and not overcommit? Where do we need to attack? You know, that's the question I'm going to try to answer next when I pull up these stats. But while I'm pulling them up, what are your thoughts on, you know, the Lions defense against this run game? Have you noticed anything throughout the week or heard anything throughout the week that you'd like to share?
The Lions are pretty good against the run, and I think we'll be just fine in that department. And even if we let up a little more than our average, who cares if we let up 100 yards running to a running back? I don't care. And one of the running backs that I would be scared of the most is Austin Eckler, because he has the most experience. He's shifty. He's good at catching the ball out of the backfield. So Austin Eckler is the one I would keep my eye on the most. The Robinson kid isn't quite as explosive, more of the Knuckles type back. So,
hey, now Knuckles has some speed.
Yeah, he does.
Knuckles has some speed.
90-yarder, remember? I think he had the longest touchdown of the year last year.
Yeah.
So it can happen, but I think that our defense will be just fine. We're going to let up some points. This is not going to be a 57-0 game. That is not what I think at all. If I was pressured into writing down a score for today, which I just did, so I have my little sheets here with the whole season and every game so far, and I just wrote down Lions versus Commanders, and I put Lions 33, Commanders 28. So I think it's going to be a 5-point game. So if you remember, I talked about,
hold on, what was your score prediction?
33-28. So if you remember, I talked about DraftKings or FanDuel losing $74 million due to Lions games this year. I think that's where this 8.5-point spread comes from. It started at 8.5 points. It went all the way up to 10, and now it's back to 8.5.
What I said yesterday.
Yeah. And if both teams go their league average, their season average, which is 33 and 28, then that would be a 5-point spread. And anyone that bet with those 8.5 points for the Lions to get better than even money will lose their money.
So I don't understand. I don't understand that. So if you take the Washington Commanders with 8.5 points,
yep,
and they lose by 5, you win the bet.
For that one, yes. But if you would bet the Lions,
right,
to win by at least 8.5 points, which means the Lions would have to win by 9 for you to win your bet.
Right.
Yeah. So there's not as many people betting on the Commanders.
It's take the money line, or you take the straight up bet. If you take the points, that's where you can get in trouble. But yeah, I said that yesterday. That $74 million loss, I feel like they're trying to make up for it too. I mean, think about this. If you have all these people betting on the Lions, which I don't know if you've looked up how what the percentage is of bets. Imagine if you have, the majority of bets on the Lions +6 or +8, right? And they lose or they win by 3 and they all lose.
Yep.
Then that's where all of that, makeup, if you will, is going to head back to Vegas.
And that's literally how I paid for my playoff tickets. I bet the Lions +10 over the Vikings. And
I don't know what's going on in the chat. I see a bunch of deleted or not deleted.
Yeah, we had a troll in there. They got rid of them.
Okay.
Yeah, no big deal. But
right now, you know what? Let them troll a little bit. Let them have a little bit of fun, because I want to be able to go back and look at it after Saturday. You know what I mean? Because tonight, I guarantee you, if Rio does make his way on, it will be a spicy chat. And I'll just be honest, unless there's like a bunch of really personal attack type stuff going on, let's just let it fly tonight. Let's just have a little bit of fun. It's only 1 week. But our mods do a great job. They don't put up with people's BS, man. It's just not what we're about here. So quick update here. Washington's offensive line. Exactly what I thought they were. There is not one player ranked in any elite category in the run game. Cornelius Lucas, tackle. He's played, 191 snaps on the season, 66.7. He's their highest graded run blocker. Tyler Biatz, 409 snaps this season, 65.5. Sam Cosmi, 486 snaps this season as their guard, 65 grade. Nick Allegretti, 63.6. Brandon Coleman, 61.4. That is in the run game. Now, let's take a look at the pass game for them. Their pass pro. Pass pro. Here we go. Come on now. It's thinking too hard. Maybe PFF is under immense pressure right now because it does not want to spit out the numbers. There we go. All right, so Pass Pro, it's same thing. 79.1 is their best grade, and that is by Cornelius Lucas. Sam Cosmi, 73.6. And then everybody else is below a 64. With all five of their starters, they're averaging about a 65. Just not good. When we look at sacks and hits and hurries, so Andrew Wiley, I think he's the right tackle. He's allowed 24 hurries. Nick Allegretti, who I think is the right guard, if I'm not mistaken, is allowing 34 hurries this season. Matter of fact, let me pull up their depth chart. And I know we're going over, Eric, so if you've got something, you just tell me.
I just got to drive to Detroit, so
I'll be done. I'll be done here in a few.
Yep, got to pack and head on down the road.
All right, so let's see. Yeah, Sam Cosmi is the right side, and Andrew Wiley is the right tackle. So Sam Cosmi is a 73.6. He's allowed 19 hurries, and Andrew Wiley, the right tackle, he's allowed 24 hurries, 3 hits, no sacks. Cosmi's allowed 1 sack and 5 hits. That's where you pressure. I think it's going to have to be on the right side, which is the left side of the defense. I think that's where you're going to have to put the most pressure. And I bet that they're going to expect, the Lions to come there. But when you look at the center, their center is not great. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't have the game of their life on Saturday night. But I would say that maybe DJ Reader is probably going to have a big night, right? He's going to be somebody that is going to have a big night. I mean, when we think about who we have left on the defensive line, we don't have Aleem anymore. And DJ was never brought in to be this sack specialist. He's never been a sack guy. Now, he has not had his average, this season, but we're going to need him to step up big time to put the pressure on the interior of this offensive line. And when we bring the pressure through the interior, that is when our DBs obviously play their best game. And I think that this is where, again, when you do see 3 linebackers in, I think that middle linebacker, whether it's Jack or Alex or whatever the Lions are trying to, pull, you'll probably see a linebacker crashing through the center of this offensive line too, to try to get after Jaden, to force him to the outside. And then when you do see that is exactly why you want to play contain with these defensive ends, because they're going to be able to bottle Jaden, force him back inside, and then he's done. If he can't get the pass off, he's done. So it'd be interesting to see. Their offensive line is trash. It is not good. No. Not good at all. Lastly, let's look at their defensive line real quick.
So do you think maybe a player like Muhammad might have a good day on Saturday?
It's funny. Muhammad, he did some interviews the other day.
Yeah. I read a good article about him this morning.
He did not want to give up any information at all. Like he was giving like 1-word answers to Macaroon.
Yeah.
He was saying that it wasn't a great interview, because he wasn't trying to give up any information, but then I guess he opened up a little bit later, he just didn't want to give up any scheme information. You know, I'm sure that the Lions are holding everything close to the vest. Matter of fact, when Brian Branch said what he did, you know, in the clip that we listened to this morning, I'm surprised he even said that much, right? But then again, you don't know what's true and what's not, right? You don't know what they're really putting out there.
Well, at least we don't have pictures of Brian Branch in front of the whiteboard with all the defensive plays on the back.
Yeah.
At least that's not out this week.
All right, so here we go. Their defensive line. Bobby Wagner is their best pass rusher. All right. He's the best. He's the best outside linebacker they have. 91.3. He's the only elite grade. Obviously, another all-pro season for him. Now, he is battling an injury right now. May or may not be an impact in this game. Frankie Louvu, which last season was somebody that, you know, I thought that maybe was going to be a decent fit for the Lions, but I love the way that he played. He's a 73.7 in the pass rush area. He's got 8 sacks this season. Bobby Wagner has 4. Dorrance Armstrong, their edge rusher, has 7. And he's a 75.8. And then Dante Fowler, their other edge rusher, is a 65.8. But he has 11 sacks on the season. So combined, you know, these guys have what, 19, 26. They have 30 sacks between those 4 players. I just don't think it's going to be enough. So when we look at where Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong line up the majority of the time, whereas Dorrance Armstrong's usually on the right, and they've got Dante Fowler as a linebacker, not an edge. And so Dante Fowler is usually the Sam. So I would assume that he's going to be on the left side more often. One of these guys is going to be on Penei Sewell. I think if their defense is going to try to get after Jared at all, it's going to be through Taylor Decker. So another key to this game is something that the Lions are going to just have to do, right? You're going to have to send a tight end in motion behind Taylor Decker or a running back to shade over behind Taylor Decker to protect Jared Goff's blind side. I don't think that, you know, between Graham Glasgow and Frank Ragnow that they're really going to give up a ton. I think that this offensive line can stay as tight knit together as they can to give Jared, you know, somewhat of a pocket. Jared's just going to have to get the ball out quick, and he's good at doing that. He's been doing it under 2.8 seconds all season. He doesn't need a full 3 seconds in the pocket. Yep, we may not be throwing the ball downfield as often, but as long as we're getting 7 to 12 yards on our receptions tonight, averaging at least 7.5 yards per catch, I think the Lions are going to be just fine. You know, again, if it's 13 play series and we're taking time off the clock, I think that is the huge benefit to the Lions in this game. I'm not overly concerned about their defensive line. Obviously, there's a few guys here that we have to take care of. And the Lions have gone up against some of the best defensive lines all season, right? You're playing this number 2, schedule, and we've gone up against it. You know, the Rams early in the season was a huge test. It was a great test. They were young, and they are much better right now. Same thing with the Bucs. They were a great test early in the season, but there's been, plenty of other teams that the Lions have faced where they've had, pretty damn good pass rush. The 49ers, another, team that came out to play, the Seahawks. And it's just, these guys, their mettle has been tested over and over and over again. I'm not worried. Are you worried at all about the offensive line?
No, not theirs or ours. Yeah, offensive line play, we're right up there at the top. If you look at PFF and you look at the overall, the Detroit Lions are number 1. And the Commanders are all the way down at number 20, right behind the Buffalo Bills at 19. And that's just the overall PFF grade for the entire team, And then if you look at offense, the Lions are number 2, the Commanders are number 13. And then if we run it over and look at the defensive numbers, the Detroit Lions are number 5, and the Commanders, I got to look way down there at number 29. And that's just PFF grades of the overall offense, defense, and the teams as a whole. But that's very telling that PFF thinks that the Lions are so much better than the Commanders. And I think that's going to play out this weekend.
I do too. And I'm gonna end on this. So, like I said last night, this season, before I do, please, in the comments below, after you listen to this, send in your score predictions. Tell us what you think about the game. You know, where do you feel the keys are, you know, for each team? How do you feel each team is going to win? But most importantly, send in your score predictions. And let's have some fun with it. So this team, this season has been about more, right? It takes more. And I think that has just been a phenomenal message that it takes more. And it takes more because when you look at what this team has been up against, the Lions have faced the most injuries in the league this season, and injuries to players of impact to this team. The team that is left has adopted the mentality that now it's time to do it for them. We did not break. We're not going to break now, but now we need to go win this for all of those guys that we have lost this season. It's time to do it for them. So players like Aiden Hutchinson, Ali McNeil, Carlton Davis, Khalil Dorsey, John Kaminsky, Kyle Pecco, Marcus Davenport, Malcolm Rodriguez, Netnani Moody, Derek Barnes. I mean, others like Antoine Green from, training camp or preseason. This rest of the season is for these guys and everybody else the Lions have lost. I know I'm missing some names here. It's for them. It's time for this team to step up like they have been all season and do it for them. And that's it. They're going to play for the guys that help put them in a position to win. And now it's time to finish the job. The Lions are going to win against the Commanders on Saturday night. I will be there, losing my voice as I always do. Hope to see you guys all there. Please pay attention to when to get loud and when not. Eric, your final 30.
Let's do this. We got this. It takes more. See you guys all down there. I cannot wait to be in Detroit.
It's gonna be a phenomenal game. It's gonna be a fun night. Dress warm. We'll see you guys all at the game. Go win Pride. Go Detroit Lions. We'll see you guys. Well, I guess later on this afternoon. Take care.
Every morning, feel that passion, they fly. Talking